a Jewish-American writer, professor, political activist, Nobel laureate, and Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel once said, "There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest." The following commentary is a protest against those of my friends and fellow Americans who claim to care about this nation and yet remain silent in the face of overt acts of racism and suppression of freedom that have accompanied the 2012 GOP campaign. I am speaking not as a partisan, but as a human being and a concerned citizen. We have seen numerous incidents of race baiting, voter suppression, bigotry, and the coercion by corporate thugs who abuse their power by forcing their employees to vote for the GOP candidate. For those who claim to be Republicans, I must remind them that traditional conservatives did not need to resort to such radical tactics. Freedom-loving Americans who would oppose racism and bigotry are now willing to quietly tolerate illegal, unethical, and unconstitutional conduct in order to gain political advantage. The courts have repeatedly struck down these attacks on voters' rights during this election. Voter suppression and coercion by unscrupulous employers has subverted the right to vote in free elections. Silence by GOP followers has set a precedent for dismantling freedom. And the rise of right-wing extremism in the GOP platform is the consequence. The party of Lincoln has become the willing hostage of hate groups. Elie Wiesel's statement, "To remain silent and indifferent is the greatest sin of all." Whether or not Republican policies are good or bad for the nation is not my greatest concern at this moment in time. It is what Americans are ignoring when they vote for candidates that are willing to manipulate public opinion by using racial slurs and innuendos that reflect the ideology of right-wing hate groups. To continue down a path like this, one can expect that tyranny and power will subvert the rule of law. Our nation is more threatened by internal issues of this nature than by any foreign threat can pose. Should our nation continue to tolerate abuse, corruption, and manipulation of our basic freedoms, we will lose the right to protest, to vote, and the hope to establish a government by the people. Jason Thompson, the son of Wisconsin Senate candidate Tommy Thompson, said, "We have the opportunity to send President Barack Obama back to Chicago or Kenya." The 38-year-old Thompson was also caught on a secretly recorded videotape speaking at a brunch organized by the local Republican Party. Attendees could be heard chuckling as a woman said, "We are taking donations for that Kenya trip." These displays are not isolated, they are commonplace and disgusting demonstrations. Mitt Romney characterized President Obama as a Muslim terrorist sympathizer because the president denounced a hate-filled videotape that targeted Muslims. The onslaught of race baiting has been disgusting. All Americans should openly denounce these misguided remarks, regardless of the party they are affiliated with. The insincere and convenient apologies that follow each of these attacks keeps the GOP in a position to garner the support of right-wing hate groups while seeking more moderate conservatives. Unfortunately, these so-called moderate conservatives are now willing to look the other way. The power of their silence may become the undoing of our remaining freedoms. I've always enjoyed friendships with people on both sides of the aisle, but for the first time, I'm ashamed of those who claim to care about this nation but look the other way at these incorrigible acts. Throughout this campaign, there have been numerous references to the president's race, origin, and religion. In too many instances, the so-called humor is received best by members of the KKK, American Nazi Party, the John Birch Society, white supremacists, and some members of the Tea Party. after seeing a Romney supporter allowed into a rally wearing a black shirt with bold white lettering that read, "Put the white back into the White House." My stomach turned. The GOP has been hijacked by a dangerous regime, one that thrives on hate, bigotry, deception, and domination. Despite my political aversion to John McCain's candidacy 4 years ago, I praised him for his denunciation of his own supporters who had castigated Barack Obama by misrepresenting his religion, nationality, and citizenship. The Romney platform, however, shows no respect for the principles that McCain upheld. The lashback against the black man in the White House has become intolerable and dangerous. Unlike John McCain, Romney has fanned the flames of enmity by comments such as, "No one ever asked to see my birth certificate. They know that this is the place that we were born and raised." Our nation needs to protest against this type of extremism and put aside party politics. Laws that prohibit corporate leaders from coercing employees to vote for their chosen candidate need to be implemented and enforced. Many of us pretend that the Republican-controlled House has dedicated itself to obstruction simply because of ideology. However, the unique resistance to President Obama that exists in Congress stems from resistance to the black man in the White House. Of course, closet racism is vehemently denied. The time has come to pull the curtain and take a good look at the kind of hate generated behind closed doors. Do we not have enough secret videotapes proving this to be true? Implementation of bipartisan support for policies that are good for the nation must not be sacrificed to satisfy those that strive to keep this nation under the control of powerful elitists and bigots. There are too many members in Congress who have dedicated themselves to seeing that the black presidency fails. Educated people know this fact, but fear the consequences of voicing it. How well has pretending that it does not exist worked? The president has faced nearly 4 years with a segment of the population and a Congress that is dedicated to throwing the black man out of the White House. The time has come to oppose and weed out the racism that infects our do-nothing Congress, so that our nation can move forward with bipartisan support of good policies. This will take courage and action that has yet to be seen in Washington. I've had my fill with those that remain silent. I don't care what party they support. It is not about who they may vote for. It's about their complicity with conduct that threatens freedom and spreads hate. I respect the right of all Americans to differ in their political opinions. But when Americans knowingly dismiss race baiting, discrimination, and the suppression of voters' rights, I must plead for silence to end. We must call on all Americans to stand up and condemn these attacks on freedom. Many of us are keenly aware of the mayhem that this behavior has created throughout history. I dread what will happen if we continue to remain silent. This is Spadecaller.